here's what we're doing. I gotta be a little bit careful. I don't want to oversell this, okay? What I'm about to tell you. We're starting Unit 3. And I mean it when I say I'm a little bit excited about Unit 3. To me, this is the one unit where I feel like I can actually get some of your thoughts, right? And it's not to say we haven't done work up till now. Some of you feel like you're fucking doing work, and you are. But Unit 3, among other things, and I'm going to get more specific because we're going to talk about the paper, right, is meant to be a bridge from 1101 to 1102, okay? We've done rhetorical analysis up till now. That's not really what we're going to do for the third paper. The third paper is meant to give you a really good, but also really low stakes glimpse into the kind of work you could be asked to do in 1102, right? To prepare you for that. But as a result, we get to talk about like just ideas you might have, and I find that interesting. More interesting at least than how does this affect the audio? Like we get tired of that, you know what I'm saying? So this is a little bit of a gear change. Before we get into what any of that means, let's talk about the specifics. And I suppose I should turn the slide off so you can see a bit better. All right, length, 3 to 4 pages. So pretty much what you're doing now for paper 2. Of course, if you go over that third page, you have more room because it's 3 to 4. Some of you are probably scoffing internally at what I just said. Know that the kind of paper this is and what it asks you to do, very few students have I ever had that had trouble hitting that length requirement. This is a more involved assignment, okay? It's gonna ask more of you. As a result, it's 30% of your grade, which I understand is terrifying. But again, we're gonna have a hot minute to work on it. It's due April 14th. That's over a month from now. I know we have spring break. When is spring break?
End of this month?
Is it end of this month?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in there somewhere.
24th? Yeah. It's about a week.
Okay. So the idea will be, because I always have to think about spring break at the end of the semester because it's going to impact this assignment. We're going to get as much work as we can done before then, because of course when you go to spring break, all of this disappears from your mind, right? And then you're kind of going to come back and you'll be like, huh? And then we'll finish up when you come back. All right, so what is it? There's a whole lot of language here, as always. I'm not going to read it at you. That would be terrible. The assignment is basically this. This is an argumentative synthesis. That's kind of a fancy way of describing a research paper, okay? Some of you may have been asked to write research papers before, like in high school or something. It's been my experience that those are not actually research papers because they're not arguments. More often than not, research papers you've been asked to write in the past maybe had you do a little bit of research, but they were book reports. They were information heavy, they were summaries, yeah? That's not what we're doing here. What are we doing? I'm going to start with the text. And by the way, there's a better than good chance that the next couple things I'm going to say to you won't completely make sense. But the whole point of today is we're going to keep talking about it until it does make sense. Okay? So here we go. Your text, kind of. You're going to pick somebody who screwed up online. Okay? They could have tweeted a thing that was unfortunate, as people will often do. And I have an example we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Or they could have done a thing like in the real world, you know, but then Twitter had an opinion about it. Something like that. The point is, you pick a person who did a thing that maybe they should not have, okay? And what I want you to write about and to think about, and what we're going to talk about here today, is the response to that thing they did, okay? A quick example I can give you, this is not what we're going to talk about today, but again, I understand that maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. One guy, I don't think I've gone a single semester teaching this assignment where I haven't at least had a few people write about Kanye West, right? That guy kind of just always says some wild shit. That's his thing. That's his thing that he does. Well, what you would not do in this paper, okay? I want to make this clear. This is one of the traps you can fall into. We are not writing about whether or not you think whatever he said was good, okay? Number one, chances are good it wasn't. And number two, even if you think it was, I don't want to know that about you, right? So that's not what the assignment is. The assignment takes the insane thing he said or did, okay? And then it looks at people's reaction to it. And what we're going to try to do, the big question we're going to try to answer, whatever that response was, what does that say about us as a people, a society, a culture? Okay? It's going to tell us something about our priorities as a society, or our values, you know? I had another good example, just forgot. Don't worry about it. Does that make a little bit of sense at this stage? Are there any questions at this stage? Because I have more to talk at you, but I want to. Yes.
Want to see what the like the effects of it was on society.
No. So, another example. I think it might be in here. I can't. Hold on. Let me look over here. So I talk about a couple things, and I give you some questions you can ask. I don't know if it's in here or not. All right. So a couple years ago, Roseanne. I don't know if you guys have heard of her. She was really famous when I was a kid. She had a show that had her name, so like it was easy to remember. And then it went away for like 20 years or 30 years, and then it came back, and it was really big again. And you know, good for her, and good for those people. And then she said some things she ought not have on Twitter. They were deeply racist, like unequivocally. I'm not even gonna say what was in them because it's pretty fucked up. She said those things. People were upset, as you can imagine. And she got kicked off her show. Yeah? That's the response. We're not writing a paper on, should she have said that? Because no. The answer would be no. Good luck writing 4 pages on no. Right? No. We're thinking about what did people say, you know, in some cases specifically to what she did or said. And then again, if we want to really measure that response, it went so far that it cost her her job. Right? And she was sort of publicly ridiculed, ostracized, whatever, for like a couple of years, honestly. So what does it say about our values, or what does it say about our priorities as a people, that given what this person did, we responded in this way? You see what I mean? All right. And again, I give you some questions on here. These are meant to start you thinking about a thing. These are in no way meant to be like the only questions you could ask, or you even have to use these. This is just sort of inquiry, okay? The other thing I want to highlight for you very quickly, before we move into an example, I just want to point this out to you. And I forgot to pull it up. This is an argumentative synthesis. I tell you it's a research paper because there is research involved. Oh, and I forgot to change the damn dates on this. That's annoying. Hang on. Let's actually go find the right dates. Right before spring break. That was smart of me. All right, so I have to remember to change the prompt. Anyway, we're going to look at this in more detail next time. We're going to actually talk about research. I'm going to give you an example. If I talk at you all class, which is what I'm doing now, and what I would continue to do if we talk about research, I'm going to lose you, okay? But I want you to know this is here. If you're the type of person that wants to get a head start, this is where this paper starts, is research, okay? There's some guidelines here. Again, these dates are super wrong. That was last semester. I'm going to fix that. I'll give you a step-by-step, and we're going to talk about it next time, but I just want you to know it's here. I give you an example down here of what a bib looks like. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, there's that. All right. Let's get to the more interesting. Oh yeah, and here's the due dates, 13th and 15th. So we got a while. All right, let's get to the more interesting stuff. The example, and this is not it. I'm gonna like reveal it to you. It's more fun for me that way. The example I'm gonna show you. Well, I'll just show it to you actually. If you have thoughts about it, just for a moment, keep them to yourself because I want everybody to experience it on their own. So here we go. This is what this guy said on Twitter. Carlton Davis, and again, this is a couple years ago, 21, so almost 2 years ago now. Carlton Davis, quarterback for the Buccaneers, Pro Bowler. If you don't know what that means, he's like all-star stuff. He's pretty good, pretty good. Young player, even younger than, okay? I think he might have been like 21, 22 tops. Says this. I can't read that. Because he got in trouble for it. Because, I'll put it to you this way. Again, without saying anything yet, because this is kind of important. Show of hands. Who knows what's wrong with this tweet? Like you could explain it. Just by a show of hands. Nobody. Okay. That might be important later. Context clues, I think we can all kind of pinpoint what's probably like, yeah, it's not Miami. Yeah, okay. Sure. This word is an Asian slur. It actually came up in the during the Korean War, which I didn't know, because it was popularized in the Vietnamese War. But, yeah. So he said that, okay? I think you can imagine how Twitter reacted. Not well. People were obviously pissed off at this guy. Absolutely, like, you can't talk like that, you can't say these things. People were calling for his job. And it was a real discussion. Like, would the NFL find this guy, suspend this guy? Would the Buccaneers cut him? These were real questions. And nobody knew for a little while. So he could have lost his job for this. Like, the stakes are pretty high. That was the response. He, of course, issues an apology, and I try to make this bigger before class. It gets weird, so I'm just going to read it in case you can't see it. He says, I would never offend any group of people. You reporters can look for another story to blow up. The term was directed toward a producer claiming he ran Miami. With that being said, I'll retire that word from my vocabulary, given, he means given, the hard times our Asian family are enduring. And then he cites an Urban Dictionary definition of the word where it says it means lame if you're from a place like South Florida. People didn't like his apology, which is also interesting if we're thinking about the response. So he continues, I used a term that from where I come from has always meant lame. I didn't realize it has a much darker negative connotation. I've learned a valuable lesson. I want to apologize to anyone that was offended by seeing that word because we need to focus on helping each other. All right. And again, people were not happy with his apology. So all of that is interesting to me. But I kind of bring all that to your attention because I'm first interested in what you might think about any of it. Any of it at all. Like, what's your response to it? Do you have thoughts on it? Anything at all. And we're going to eventually get to what we might try to do if we were writing about this guy. But I'm just curious. Do you have thoughts on his initial tweet, on his apology? Do you happen to feel like you maybe agree with the general response people had against him, where they were like calling for his job, or what do you think?
I mean, I guess it would have to be people who are in that area to be like, hey, well, we use it like this, but we didn't know we were using it like that. Because he's saying that where he's from,
Yeah.
they use it. So then wouldn't other people that are from there also be like, yeah, it's common?
Well, and it's weird that he cites Urban Dictionary because like that's not like a real website. But also, if you're going to talk about slang, it's like the Wikipedia of slang, so it kind of is legitimate in this case. Like when he posts that to me, I'm like, well, it gives him some credibility. If we're going to talk about a rhetorical argument for a second, like this is the one thing you could cite to say, see, like I didn't make this up. So yeah.
I mean, I think none of us really even knew what it meant either, so we didn't even know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, what interests me, because I've taught this for a couple semesters now, last semester, I cannot forget this. A girl said, and I quote, it stuck with me since then, and I love it because it really summed up the response that he got. He's a grown-ass man, he should have known better. That's what she said. Well,
Not really.
why do you say that? I'm interested in.
Because I mean, that word could be, apparently, some people, it means something bad.
Yeah.
But to him, it's a common word that he used when he was a child. People around him probably use on a regular day
Yeah.
as just a word
Yeah.
to, say somebody's name or something.
Well, what's interesting to me, and I agree with that, what's interesting to me about all of that, first of all, grown-ass man, and again, I'm not trying to offend anyone, he's like 21 or something when he says it. He's not a grown man. He's not. Like, in terms of life, no. But that he should have known better, is it because, as you guys all said, you didn't know. And why would you? You're 20. Vietnam ended in the 70s. I wasn't even alive. I've just seen movies and shit. You know what I'm saying?
I think also like
Yes.
like words, they switch different meanings from generation.
Words change all the time. Yeah, that's how they work. The reason Latin is dead, one, is because all the people who spoke it died. But two, it never changed. When language doesn't evolve, it dies. For sure.
Like I'm not excusing the
Well, and we're going to talk about that, right? But the last thing I want to tell you, I love this part of the story, so I want to give it to you. The girl that says this, when I asked them, show of hands, she didn't raise her hand. She also didn't know what the word meant. And it's like if you don't know what it means, you would you're expecting this guy to know, right? Like that's weird. But I also think that nicely sums up the response. So my real question is, and you guys got there very quickly, which is cool, I guess. Why do you think people respond that way to this? Like, granted, I would wager most of the people who had a problem with what he said knew what the word meant, right? Or at least had a sense of what the word meant.
I think it's because once people understood, it's like that for one of its definitions, people are like, well, yeah, that's not right to say.
Yeah. Well, but so here's my question. Like, when the initial tweet comes out, I get it. And I think on some level we all do. That would be like if you slipped up, like, real quick, I'm going to be very careful with my directions. Think of a word you could not say right now in class. Think of it. Don't say it. Okay. If you tweeted that, I think you would expect some pushback. You would expect some like, Jesus Christ, man, what are you doing, right? But then if you issued an apology, and I honestly didn't know, I'm sorry, what's interesting to me is not so much the response to the initial tweet, because that makes sense. I get it. We can talk about it some. But it's to the apology. By and large, people did not accept his apology. Again, it was that you should have known better, blah, blah, blah. So that tells me a couple things. Number one, we don't seem to believe his apology. I'm curious if you guys have thoughts on that. And number two, it seems to, at least in part, come from this place of he should have known better. We've already covered that at worst it's believable he didn't know. But then, so what's this idea that he should have? Like, that's an interesting phrase. You can't know everything, but he should have known this thing.
Because he said it, you should know what you're saying.
And,
Well, that's an idea we have. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily you should know what you said.
Well, I think so. Let's start here. We're working from a place of assumption, right? And I know I've said this to you guys at least a couple times, but like, so much in our lives really isn't knowledge. It's an assumed knowledge. You assume you know things, and you do know some things. But you don't know everything, right? But you couldn't go through life always going. You'd be like fucking terrified of everything, right? So we assume we know these things. And I think in part, at least, that gets extended to Carlton Davis, where it's like, you just figure if he's going to use that word, he knows what it means in the dictionary rather than the Urban Dictionary. But if we're honest with ourselves, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you guys ever feel like you use words that like you're not super confident in? Like maybe in a paper or something? You ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of all the time.
There's also like,
Yes.
there's this a term used to describe someone in your region
Uh-huh.
as a slur,
Yeah.
but here it's not.
Well, it's when I say it's an Asian, it's a slur for Asian people that I do think actually, and I haven't looked up the etymology in a while. I think it may have come out of Asia. It came from somewhere else. But Americans in the '60s were like, or '50s, we're gonna take that shit. They were big on slurs in the '50s. So, but the point you're making, like what we're really saying is, to continue your thought, even America, where the term really was popularized in the '50s and '60s, is a very different place from Miami in the fucking 2000s, like year 2000. Very different place, yeah? And so he's entirely divorced in some ways from that original meaning for him, right? So again, all this is to say, to me, I think his apology is at worst believable, right? We can't know if he really knew or not. But it seems credible, it makes sense, yeah? So again, I wonder, why do you guys think, this is the part, we're just throwing out ideas, okay? But this is the kind of work we're gonna start to do in this paper. Why do you think no one accepts that apology? Why do you think they say things like,
He could have just used the word blame if he wanted to use it.
he could, but apparently, I don't know anything about growing up in Miami, apparently, they use that word for lame, you know?
I think that's also.
Well, then he should have used it for America, like everyone, not just Miami.
Well, he's talking how he's always talked, right? Like to push back a little bit, do you guys have any slang you use? Hit me with some of it, as long as it's like okay for class.
Howdy.
You say howdy?
Yeah, howdy, how y'all doing?
Well, you know,
My friend texted me howdy like 2 days ago.
if I'm being honest, you wouldn't get the same kind of pushback Carlton Davis got, right? You wouldn't get that. You would get some pushback, I think.
Yeah, usually people answer like, I'm good.
Or they, but I'm
Okay.
saying, but even that word, like people make assumptions, right? Like, how old is this fucking guy? Is he like secretly 60? Like, what's going on? I'm just saying, like we form assumptions based around these terms, you know, and they're not all intentional. I'm sorry, I keep stepping on you. What is it?
No, I was just laughing because there's one I say, but it's like
Now
for
you-
Mexicans.
Oh, now you have to say it.
Oh, well,
Is it Spanish?
yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, me and my friend were both Mexican,
Uh huh.
so we bought like tortilla blankets,
Okay.
and they'll just be like 2 beans in a tortilla. And
What I love about that is I couldn't say that shit ever, you know? Sure. Okay. So where we've arrived is, there is this question of almost ownership of a word or idea, especially if it has anything to do with somebody's identity, their background, what have you. And you know, I don't know a lot about Carlton Davis, if I'm being honest, but like I feel like he's probably not Asian, you know? Like, and I say that to say, like, people on Twitter would see him and go, he doesn't get to use that fucking word, right? Because we have words like that, right? Still, and I suppose I should take that particular one off screen. Why don't we believe his apology? Does it come back to this idea that if you're going to use a word, you should know what it means? Even though, again, part of my pushback was like, you guys will use words and not know what they mean. You know what I'm saying? Why do we, oh, you got your hand up.
I feel like people say anything like every day, like
Yeah.
people just make up words and
Yeah,
like slang is anything.
it is. Well, it can come from different places, but yeah, it can be anything. But like my question is, we're trying to bring it to the paper now, right? Like, I think maybe on an individual level, you guys don't feel like you do this. But again, we're not just talking about us in this room. We're talking about us as a society, however many million people it is now. I think it's like 500 million people or something. Why do we kind of have this expectation for other people, you know? That they should or do always know what they're saying, right? That they could never misspeak or use a word they don't realize is an Asian slur, you know what I'm saying? Like, why do you guys think we do that to each other? Because we for sure do.
Cancel culture. People just want to cancel.
Yeah, it
people.
is a big cancel
Yeah.
culture thing.
People
Everybody
like
wants to
cancel.
cancel somebody for something.
We can start there.
People just like.
It could be for like the slightest, smallest thing.
Well, there's a sliding scale though, too.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent. And look, again, what he said is like equivalent to some really what?
No, it's because I'm like, you say that, but if you've ever like on TikTok, if you say like,
I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm never on TikTok.
oh my
I mean,
god,
I'm not even so.
it's just like you'll say something and then,
Uh-huh.
like, people
Have you been
will-
canceled?
No.
Okay.
No, but I've seen a lot of people. You see a lot of people get canceled like left and right on TikTok.
Okay. Well, but the sliding scale I'm talking about, and you'll always hear stories about maybe things going too far, or things being insane, and perhaps one of those could be one of your papers. Like that's an option. But the point I'm making is, some, if we're gonna call them cancellations, because we have this term cancel culture. Okay. Some of them can be really short-lived. You know, you'll hear people like go to Twitter jail or whatever. Like, you know, you lose your account for 72 hours. Is that, you know, as opposed to you use a slur for Asian folks and people are calling for your job. Like that's kind of as far as like. So I'm just saying it can be different things. To return to the point you guys made, why do you think? And we got to try to be specific, like always. So in this case, why do you think people want to cancel him so badly that they're willing to say things like, he should have known what he said, he should have known better, there's no way he didn't know what that word meant? Like, why do you think, what motivates that perspective, I guess? Huh?
Power, feel power.
Over him?
Like I guess, like you just feel powerful. Like say,
Like
you can
righteousness.
say something and make him lose his job. Like
Yeah. Well, so those I think come from the same tree, but they might be different branches, if you pardon the metaphor. So like we'll take, and then we'll take this one on. Okay. One question: power, maybe. Why might, again, we're throwing out ideas. Okay. What might be attractive, or what might motivate anyone to? I don't even want to say exercise power, because I don't know if it's that, but like want to feel empowered to this guy.
it's like, I mean, most people
Because he
feel
in the
empowered.
NFL.
He's famous,
Fame, he got money.
rich, and
People want to see
People,
downfall.
most of the cancel culture goes to people that are like famous, have money, like Kanye,
Yeah,
Kardashian.
well, but to be fair, it's harder to cancel somebody if like if you
You're not
cancel me,
famous.
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, average people
Yeah,
don't get canceled.
average people.
What are you gonna
don't-
take from me? Oh yeah, we talked about that, but that's different. That's old school canceling. That's different.
Constantly during your work time.
Yeah, but oh yeah, besides, let's not record that conversation. No, like all I'm saying is, just to be fair, the kind of canceling you guys are talking about, the only way to kind of do it is to have something you can lose, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, yeah, if he loses his job, if I lost my job, that would suck. But it's not quite the same as Carlton Davis losing his job. We're talking about millions of dollars. Someone took millions of dollars from you. I couldn't even fathom it, honestly. That means nothing to me because it's so far outside like what's possible for my life as I know it. But all that said, there is something to what you guys are describing, like taking him down a peg sort of thing. Is it like that? Some of you know it. Okay. Well, is it? Why do you think we want to do that to these rich and or powerful folks?
Because we're not
Down
rich.
to our level, they get-
We're not rich.
jealous.
We're not in the NFL.
Maybe. I mean, I just want to be careful, like specifically assigning emotions to it. Like, could that be part of it? Yeah. But so for the first thing we're supposing in this kind of argument, I still want to get back to yours as well, because I think they're coming from a similar place. But we're supposing that most of the people on Twitter who would do a thing like call for this guy's job are what kind of person? Like if we're saying they want to take him down, like to their level, I guess? What is their level? What are we envisioning here?
That girl in your class. She's like,
Well, like normal people, like maybe living paycheck to paycheck or slightly better than that, like,
she's not,
Just getting by.
yeah,
just not famous people. I don't know.
yeah.
Like, you're not famous.
Well, and so Carlton Davis, I don't know a lot about the Tampa Bay area, but I imagine he doesn't just have his job with the Buccaneers. He probably has some endorsement deals. You know, he has like other things like. So he has his public persona that he's getting paid for. That I mean, you know, gets damaged when this happens. We don't have access to any of that. To maybe return to your point about like jealousy or something. But still, I want to try to, if we could, describe why. What about his original tweet and or the apology has people in the position you're describing see that and go, I'm gonna get this guy. Like, basically, we have to attach it to our evidence in some way, you know?
Maybe he just tweeted it. Maybe he should have did something else.
Like what?
Something.
What?
Maybe.
Oh, you said, oh, for the apology? Yeah. Well, so all right. This is a side conversation, and I'm still coming back. I haven't forgotten about you, Eureka. Okay. Because I do that sometimes. I'm just letting you know I haven't forgotten. This is a sidebar to the conversation, I guess, because we do. It's almost a genre now. This like public apology tweet or something or video. Aren't apology videos are almost always like way too close to the person's face, so you can see how sorry they are. I guess, you know, and they're really like, oh, I shouldn't have worn blackface, you know, like really like that. Do we ever, I'm asking, do we ever buy these apologies on Twitter or video or, I feel like usually no, right?
Especially with the video.
So I have a couple questions, but my first question would be, why not? You know, why not?
Could be fake and acting. If you
They could be, they could be.
Because I know sometimes I've seen some videos where it'll be like, they'll be cutting in and out to different parts.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like they'll be talking, then it cuts.
Yeah, well,
It's like
I'm
the
just,
person's like skipping.
to play devil's advocate, maybe they started crying and they cut that
I
out.
mean, maybe.
I'm saying it's
But
possible.
sometimes- It just sometimes looks suspicious.
Sure.
I think it's because we always come back to the point of like, I think, like he should have known better. kind of thing.
People mention that part, I still don't know who that is. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
So I think it always goes back to the thing of like, he should have known better, like he's a celebrity.
So what you're saying, I think, and it ties into what we're getting about the apology, but there's more questions there. It sounds like once the infraction is committed, whatever it is, right? There's really no coming back from it. You're unforgivable, which is wild. And my question is why? I'm not saying what he said was okay. I'm not doing that. But I'm saying,
People are held to a higher responsibility.
who are?
People who are more known. I
Yeah, I
guess.
think-
Famous
The
people.
famous
The
Yeah.
more known you
So-
are, the more
I think it's because we
More
see
people
them
expect you
as,
to
like,
know.
Yeah.
higher than us, like we're down
All right, so
there.
let's define this real quick. Because this guy was born, I'm not saying he didn't work hard, but was born faster, jumping higher, and he can really make sure you don't catch a football, because that's what corners do in the NFL for the most part. He'll tackle as well, though. He's a good corner. We should hold him to a higher moral standard. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And I'm not saying we don't. But again, what interests me is like, why?
Because if he is better, then he should do better.
What better athletically? My question is, and I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I'm not saying that this isn't what is happening. But what we could try to solve, or just throw out ideas, is like, why do we see a guy who's famous and making money because he's athletically gifted and all these things? Why do we see all that and go, he must be a great person? Must. So much so that if he does a thing like this, and we can think of other examples where, if we're just talking about athletes or famous people, have done a thing that somehow didn't make them seem like a great person. I mean, what are we usually shocked? Like, it might, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I also feel that whenever you're more of an actor athlete, you're more based on what people feel about you too.
What do you mean?
So in football, if people don't like an athlete, they'll
Yeah.
stop watching them play, and so that's less viewers for their football.
Maybe. I don't know about that. I mean, maybe. In small cases. I mean, generally, because the only example I have for that, people were pretty pissy about Kaepernick kneeling during the anthem years ago. And a lot of people, I'm not watching him, blah, blah, and like viewership lagged a little bit that season, but then it came roaring back to, like, it's not, so that is an idea. I just don't know how true it is, right? But let's move beyond this. And I still haven't forgotten if we have time, we'll return to what you said, but I think this may help everybody. Can you guys think of an example that you may know more about than Carlton Davis? Yeah.
Like this. You ever heard of the Liver King?
Oh, yeah, I heard it.
Okay, so like
This guy did steroids.
Yes, the Liver King.
I loved it. Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna find a picture of him.
Yeah, so that was like shocking to like everybody. Like, 'cause the
Well,
Liver
that's my
King,
favorite part.
You know, he was like this, did all this like crazy stuff.
You're telling me this guy did steroids?
Yeah, he was
Hang
supposed
on.
to be all natural and stuff.
This guy eating raw liver in a field was cheating.
Yeah, geez.
Let's talk about that. That's interesting. This is different from Carlton Davis. Carlton Davis did a thing. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but that's not what we're saying in the paper, right? What's interesting is it seems like most people are not. And the question to start our paper would be, why? Why can't we give this guy the benefit of the doubt? You know? Not least of which, by the end, he says, I'm not going to use that word again now that I know, you know, and I'm sorry, and all. It's all the things you would want him to say, and if he meant it. But also the question is like, well, we don't think he means it.
I mean, none of us really know him personally, so how can we trust him anyways?
Well, what you're saying there is that means we automatically have to distrust him. You see what I'm saying? Couldn't you just as easily say, well, I don't know the guy, so why would I assume the worst about him, right? It seems like in many of these cases we do the opposite. He must have meant it. It must be the worst possible thing that could happen. It must be. Why? Because that's our paper in that case. Why do we assume the worst possible thing? And then we're going to fucking talk about this guy. Why do you guys think we assume the worst possible?
Society has like very high expectations for celebrities.
So once they fall or once they falter, right? Not even fall, but somehow don't live up to that standard.
I think it's because like we all like, you know, falter and make.
Because we're human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like since we see them as maybe more than.
As beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like when they falter, like yeah, see, fucking skanky, the same as us.
That got dark real fast. Okay. We're gonna come back to that, but I want Eureka, what did you have?
Well, it's like when your idol, you just expect them
Ah.
to be perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So, skank notwithstanding, the term idol, you know, we use it. We've had it for a long time. Doesn't necessarily mean this these days in the common parlance, but it still has a ring of godliness. That's what an idol is. False god in some cases, a representation of a god, but it's a god. It's not a person. Yeah. And then when you see them do a thing that a person would do, well, you can't be a god now because you're a dude.
Because I mean, for the majority of the time, people who are fans, they tend to idolize them. So
Yeah.
when they see the fault in it, it's kind of like, oh, you did me wrong.
So you feel almost betrayed by that person. Isn't that wild? Again, I know I said that several times, but like the people, and this kind of segues to this guy, who somehow, look, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but come on, dude. People shocked, and they were shocked when this guy, they find out he was on steroids. What planet are you from? Look at this idiot. Look at him. But they feel betrayed because he lied. Yeah? What kind of people can betray you? No one's ever asked you that question, I assume.
Only your friend, your enemies cannot.
Somebody you're close to, that you trust, like friend. So now we're saying, Carlton Davis, NFL cornerback. Some fucking guy who calls himself the Liver King is your friend. He's your buddy. And I'm not saying you, but people that followed him, right? His Instagram is right here. And he's probably lost, he has 1.8 million followers, and I'm sure he lost a ton, right? How many of those people look at that guy and don't put it in these words, but like, he's my friend? Why do you think we do that? That we idolize these people to the point where we feel close to them, you know?
Well, I think for the most part,
Mhm.
Instagram or YouTube is like this way of like intimacy with the viewer.
Oh, there's some of that, but look, it existed before YouTube and Instagram. The story I have where I felt betrayed, what time is it, by the way? I'm not keeping track.
112.
Sweet. I grew up, and I still am a Falcons fan, which is a bummer. That's a different story because they're not good most of the time. But in my era, my quarterback was Mike Vick. Pretty good quarterback. You may have heard of him. You may also have heard at some point what ended his tenure in Atlanta is he ran a dogfighting ring where he like beat dogs and watched them kill each other in pits and like nothing good. Does nothing good. And I think I was in like elementary school, middle school. That was a hard one, man. That was a really hard one. Idolized that guy, you know? Felt betrayed in some way. Because he wasn't who I thought he was. I definitely did. I just thought he was like ran real fast and cool. And he was those things, but it was this other thing too. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't know about that one. When in truth, I couldn't have known him at all. How would I know this guy? First of all, I was a kid and he was in the NFL. He's an adult man. We're not hanging out, you know? But something about, I think it's connected, this idolization that we're talking about, putting them on this pedestal somehow, transforms into we're almost friends. The term we have is parasocial, right? This idea, because it's a one-way relationship. You're going to see all this guy's posts, and he's going to talk at you like he's talking to the camera, you know? And you feel connected to him that way. He doesn't know your name, know anything about you. That's kind of how it works. But I point all that to say it has existed before that. So I think it goes deeper than that. I think it's connected to celebrities that you really, not just follow, but like, I almost want to say adore, and that may be too strong of a word. So I'll ask you a weird question. We brought up the Liver King. One question I want to ask, I guess, before we move on, because this is what really struck me when you pointed this out. Look, we've had a couple laughs about it. I love this. Look at this one down here. Oh my God. This guy. He doesn't even look like an action figure. They don't make him like that. This is not believable. Jesus. It's not even the fact to me, and you could write a paper on the people that felt betrayed, the people that felt like, oh, how could you? There's a paper there. I'm also interested in the people that bought it that ever looked at that guy and went, that's natural. 40 million push-ups a day, bro. That's what he's doing. You know, one of his arms fell off, he just put it back on. Like, why do you think people saw that and were like, and were willing to? I think we got to put it that way. Willing to look at that guy and go,
Because people wanted to look like that.
do I know?
Because some people wanted to look like that.
They want to look like
They were
that.
hoping it would be real.
They see like the potential image of themselves.
That's why.
So it's attainable. They see this thing that they want to be. And so therefore, for it to be possible for them, and let's go ahead and say unlikely. Unlikely, but possible, maybe. It needs to be something that they can get. And so now what we've said, it's not even that he cheated that potentially bothers people. What bothers them the most is it dispels that myth that you could look like this guy and not be juiced up. And that myth is what mattered to people. Why is that? Let's talk about that for 1 second. Why does that matter to people? So much so, I want to be clear, that they would let this guy lie to them.
Pretty much takes away their hope.
It's hope. It's hope.
Their delusions begin to unravel.
Well, there's a very thin line between hope and delusion, right? I mean, that's kind of a bummer thing to say, but like, it's true, right? If you're gonna really believe in something, I can be that one day. You gotta be a little bit delusional,
You see
at
that
least.
in a lot of different movies, like, you know what I mean? That same mechanism.
Yeah.
Like, you see it in a lot of movies where, like, as long as I have hope, you know, like, give them hope, they'll believe anything.
Well, but to your point, at least in maybe a sideways way, we do have this narrative, I think, as a culture, that all you need is a shot, is a break, right? If somebody gives you a break, you'll show them all that you're, that's not how life works. Are you crazy? But that doesn't make a good movie. We like that myth, we like that hope. And I think in this particular case, it has a lot to do with what's possible for me, right? So now we're seeing not ourselves in this guy, but our potential selves. So he didn't just betray us, he betrayed what we thought we could be. Ugh, that's a paper. Okay. What I wanted to ask you guys, but I did want to talk about this idiot for 1 second. I keep calling him an idiot. He's fine, actually. Whatever he's doing to his body is probably not going to go well eventually, right? But it's his 1.8 million followers. They're idiots. He's a dude that was like, yeah, this will probably work. He was right.
Some money.
He's probably smart. Again, minus the whatever, like, his 60s are not going to go well, right? But up until then, it'll probably be a pretty sweet run.
I think he's doing a lot of job in his marketing, he's not urged.
Yeah. Well, but see, he's understanding a lot of what we were talking about. Why would anybody look at that guy and go, real person? Because they want to, right? All right, what I am interested now, that's one good example. Let's get at least one or two more. Especially if I suppose it's got to be a celebrity, the way we're talking about this, right? That you felt like betrayed by, or you felt, I don't want to lead you too much, but anything we've said up to now, it like resonated with you in some way. You gasped,
Well,
as
I
if you had a
know-
realization.
Well, I know for a lot of people like Shane Dawson,
I don't know who this is.
It was like a whole thing of like,
Is he like a YouTube guy?
yeah.
Okay. That's why I don't know. who he
It
is.
was like a lot of stuff with like children.
You have to
Yeah,
qualify
definitely.
that because that
well, it wasn't.
could mean several things.
It wasn't
supposed to be for children.
It wasn't supposed to, it was supposed to be for. I can't really like describe it.
Okay, well, what I thought you were getting at is like pedophilia. Like, are we taking that's off the table?
No, he did a lot of, he did.
It is.
I just want to be clear on what we're talking about.
A little bit of a better example would probably be like James Charles.
Yeah.
He was like trying to like get at little boys and stuff, like 13-year-old boys,
Okay.
And then,
sending inappropriate stuff to them, trying to talk to them.
Oh, and it was like exposed somehow.
Yeah.
Pardon the pun there, but
Have you heard of the Murdoch trials? What's going on?
I feel like I've heard of this, but
What's going on now? The Murdoch trials are pretty interesting.
this is like actually in courts.
I think it's still in court right now.
What I would recommend, if possible, and I'm glad you brought that up, to avoid actual criminal trials. Only because what we're interested in, if it helps to think of it this way, is Twitter court, kind of? Like the court of public opinion, right? Actual jail, actual courts, they have punishments. You know what I'm saying? And then like we're not getting into like legal debates. So I'm glad you brought it. I forgot to mention that. Of course, if there are other things whoever that is has done, I mean that could potentially be looked at. But we're interested in these like Twitter. What's up?
It's pretty interesting.
I would, if he's in court, yeah, I would, or she, whoever the hell that is. Tell me about somebody. Charles, James Charles, or I don't know who these people are. Sam Dawson, Steve, who's this person? Dawson something. Shane Dawson. What does Shane Dawson do? Tell us one thing.
Oh, one thing?
Because what? And again,
Well,
to be
the
clear.
one thing that eventually got him canceled
Okay.
was his use of blackface.
Oh.
Yeah, and he
That's a hard one.
targeted that towards like,
I'm gonna be honest. You said Shane Dawson. I was like, that sounds like a white dude to me.
yeah.
Like a very white dude.
And that's what eventually led to his downfall. I mean, he has a lot of questionable stuff.
A lot of, I won't say normally, a lot of the time if you like get caught doing blackface, it's not like the only thing you did, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, well, so I have a couple questions. Like number one, because we want to be specific, you make it sound like had a career, I guess on YouTube or whatever, and then years before he had done like blackface stuff, or
Well, he didn't get canceled for it. He just like put the video, like he didn't apologize or anything. He just like took the video away, and then people like brought it back up and were like, "Hey, you never even like formally apologized for this. You just like took it down and were like."
let's talk about that.
I'll never
We
do
have,
it again.
all right, so we've talked about different modes that this can manifest. We haven't talked about this one. Let's talk about this one. There is this like, almost like archaeological dig that'll happen, you know, where they'll go and find shit you did before, even if you try to, I guess, take it down, and then demand retribution, apology, or punishment, right? What is that about, do you think? Because, and you may not, like, how many years previous, what do you know? Ballpark?
I mean.
Was it more than 5 years previous? See, that to me, like, man, I'm gonna be 37 this year, and I'm not, you probably don't change as much once you hit your 30s. But now I'm thinking, like, when I was 30, if you came at me with something I did or said when I was 25, I'd be like, that was a totally different person, man. I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't even know who that person was who did that thing. Because you change, like, however old you're 18, right? If somebody came at you and were like, remember what you did when you were 12? You'd be like, no, I don't. That person was a fool. Because you were 12. Right, I'm just, again, trying to play devil's advocate a little bit. It's interesting that we, as a society, will like look back at your permanent record, right? And dredge up these things like, what about this type of thing, yeah? And this guy may be an asshole. I don't know, I know nothing about him. But that's still an interesting mechanism. Why do you guys think we do that? Like, we seek out the bad things you did. Do you know what I mean? What would motivate that?
I think for a long time people wanted him to be accountable for a lot of things that he did.
Okay. So this particular person has like a career of.
I mean, when he was like 20 or something, he just like a 14, 16-year-old.
Yeah.
And like recorded.
Like he was purposely seeking out underage girls, or.
Well, he was purposely, he was like, oh, let's exchange like gum or something like that. And
So he like knew she was underage.
I think he did.
You don't seem sure. I'm just.
But,
Those things matter. You know what I mean? Like I'm.
It was like a really long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that and then some
It
other
may.
stuff.
I mean, that guy's one thing, but it may also be helpful to think about somebody. What time is it? I'm scared.
125.
Thank you. All right, a couple, because I want to give you guys as many options as we can. So, like I brought up Kanye West earlier. What's most interesting to me about a guy like Kanye West isn't even the most recent thing he did, which, by the way, I can't really tell you about because I didn't pay attention. Because what's interesting to me about Kanye West at this point is not that he says wild shit. Of course he does. Of course he does. What's interesting to me is that anybody is surprised at this point. You know what I'm saying? How? How could you be surprised now? You know? I really thought he was growing up. No. And also, why would he?
Yeah.
Why
It's
would
crazy.
he actually, and I've had students write in the past about him. I've had people write about Britney Spears before. There is one way to think about any of this is, yeah, a lot of the stuff these people do is probably not okay. Pretty easy to say that. But the response is never, let's help these people. Kanye West might actually probably need help. Yeah, well, but how much of the like maybe 5% of the conversation is that, and the other 95 is like this motherfucker. Like it always. Why?
Because I think you expect them to have a redemption arc, and then they like fall back into their old habits, or like you think they can't get any lower, and then
So-
he sets the bar even low.
So one idea, I like that. I mean, there's a couple of possibilities, okay? But one idea gets back to this hope question. But now we're not, well, it could, well, I don't want to, but we're hopeful that Kanye West will redeem himself, I guess, somehow. And by the way, be a totally different person for fucking, what, past 10 years or whatever he's like, probably longer than that. And that may, one hypothetical argument I would like, that may attach to our earlier conversation about like Liver King and like, why do we think he can change and be better? And it's like, well, because that means I can, right? Kanye West can stop saying like anti-Semitic shit, you know, and then maybe I'll not be racist or whatever. Like that could be one, that's an argument. That the idolization that we sort of put these people through, the pedestals we put them on, is really just so we can one day end up on a pedestal right next to him, right? And if we see a guy like Kanye West just keeps falling off the fucking pedestal, it really brings me down. Damn it. In my Yeezys. Yeah, that would be one. That would be one. I mean, another idea is why... It kind of gets me back to my original question. Why would anybody be surprised? That to me, we talk about believing people. I don't believe it. At least most of the time. I truly don't. That anyone would go, can you believe he said this? I'm like, yes, I can. 100% I can. How can anyone be shocked, I guess, at Kanye West, do you think? In particular, because I think he's a really good example. And it reminds me of this Dawson person. How can anyone be shocked if he's had this is his brand at this point, right? This is his career that he does these things.
I think it's like, maybe because to us it's like out of the ordinary, like
But again, he's always been out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
That's his deal.
Yeah, but I think like, if it, like me thinking about it, like I don't see how that can be logical to like keep going back to like being, I guess, a better word.
Well, I mean, like I would argue, at least in some way, that's been part of his appeal, right?
Yeah, in some way, but to an extent, it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but so there's a couple different lines. So one argument we could think about is that people are kind of okay with it until like maybe your latest album isn't as good, or it's been a while between albums.
Yeah.
You know, there's that.
Yeah.
That's for sure a thing. Michael Jackson has been too dead for too long to put out any music, and now people are coming for him. It's like, well, we were dancing to you before, man, but like, time's up.
Yeah.
Type of thing. There's that. I also wonder, like, if we can admit he might need help, which I'm not a clinician, but like, he should at least talk to somebody, type of thing. I think hasn't he talked before about like being on meds and stuff? I don't feel like I'm not making that up.
Yeah, he has.
I think so.
Come on, Kanye.
Well,
It makes sense, is all I'm saying. But if that's the case, the conversation is never that. It's always, let's bury this guy, let's get him off of Twitter or whatever. Why not the other? Why not let's get him some help? Maybe you take him off Twitter because maybe he shouldn't be on Twitter. Fine, but like, let's end his career. Let's end his shoe contract. Let's like do all these things to him. Those are punishments rather than. It's the equivalent to the criminal justice system for centuries, millennia, has been about punishment. And only very recently have we tried to say what should be about rehabilitation, right? Like, you have your hand, yes.
I guess it, for a lot of people, it feels like an injustice because Twitter keeps having him on the platform.
I'm so interested. I like that language. Please continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
And people want him to be held accountable, and there's no other way to hold him accountable aside from Twitter taking away.
Yeah. Well, but damn, and I think that word is perfect, but like, it's an injustice. It's an injustice. You know they use language like that during the civil rights movement. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what injustice is. And I'm not saying what he said is okay, because obviously it's not. But like, damn, man, those are two very different things. Because so now I think we're having a conversation about kind of how seriously we take a thing like Twitter. And by the way, we're using Twitter to stand in for all the social media. Pick a platform. Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is. You know, we're just kind of saying Twitter is a catch-all. Is your hand up? I can't tell. I think you goddamn know. All right. Why is it so important, do you think? Because I do think it is. People would use language like it's an injustice type of thing. What the hell is that about?
I mean, the history behind his anti-Semitic remarks.
All right, so that one in particular. Well, that one in particular because then it's. I mean, it's easily attached to fucking Nazis and all. Yes, but also sort of to defend Kanye West. I would go back to. I'm trying to be real careful. I want to be clear. I'm not saying it's totally fine. I'm not doing that. But to me, it's just more of the Banana Land stuff he's always said. You know? Oh, my personal favorite was slavery was a choice, he said years ago. There's history behind that, pretty well documented. And he got pushback for that too, you know? But my bigger point is like, well, how could you look at the guy that said that, and then he says this, and you go, well, how could he say that? It's like, of course he said that.
Well,
It's the same brain, you know what I mean?
I guess it's like the in-between people like kept making excuses from like that instance to this jump. Like throughout that timeline, he had his form of whatever people had deemed a redemption arc for.
Yeah, he calmed the hell down for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, it returns to this argument of some element of time passes, which is interesting too, like some amount of time has to pass. And then we get to, all right, he said the screwed up thing, but we've all moved past it. Kanye, let's just like be cool, man. And then he says another thing, and people go back to being upset, to it being an injustice.
I mean, they're both injustice.
Well, doesn't that? No, I'm not saying you're saying that. Yeah, I'm not doing that. But doesn't that kind of suggest there's a shelf life to our outrage? I think Oliver makes this point, right?
I guess for like, if you think about it with family members, like they'll do something horrible.
Now I'm gonna stop you real quick. Are we saying Kanye West is family?
I guess to his viewers, they can potentially.
That's interesting. Go ahead. I'm just. Go ahead.
Feel like a familiar sense.
Uncle Kanye.
Like, I guess. Because like, if you have someone who you think is close to you or in your.
Yeah. No, we keep coming back to this like parasocial relationship, like feeling
Yeah.
like you know the person. And yeah.
Yeah. Like with family, like, oh well, I'm going to forgive this because you're my idol.
Well, and because you want them to be better than perhaps they are, or at the very least very different from how they are, you know? Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna ask again. What time is it? 35. Okay, we're winding down. But there's one more question I want to raise. And again, we're doing all of this to say you would not ask or try to answer all of these questions about whatever you end up picking. Okay, but these are options, right? One more you raised here at the end is the fact that people could think of this as an injustice. I'm sticking to that word because I think it's apt, but it's also a very strong word. People could feel that strongly. But then like 6 months later or something, if that, be fine with it. Do you know what I mean? What is that about? Like to get over it to feel so strongly, and then if I'm being honest, I think 6 months is way too long. I'm gonna say like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, to move past it like that? What the hell is that? Yeah.
There's also other things trending, so then you move on to that.
So you only have so much room to be upset about things for one, right? Yeah.
I think it's because over a little bit of time, you come to the realization like this has no effect. It's just
Maybe. Well, but are we kind of saying that if you're doing that, but if you're kind of doing it sort of all the time, wouldn't you at some point have the realization that it never affected? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the fact, that it keeps happening, even if only subconsciously you go, I'm never going to meet Kanye West. I think I can just live my life and not worry about it. Why do we keep doing it? Well, but that's what we got to try to answer in this particular case. Why do you guys think? And again, it may not be you. Maybe you're really cool. You know, I don't know.
I was thinking, I was like, I mean, me, like, I don't think.
But we're thinking about generally. There's a significant portion of the population who does this stuff, right? Why? What would motivate that behavior, that maybe even worldview? I don't know. To like kind of cyclically always find something to most innocuously like disapprove of, you know? Yeah, I told you we'd come back. We can do that real quick. What do you mean by that?
I guess because when you're behind the screen, you just, I'm better than this person. Because you don't really know them.
Yeah,
I can do better than them. I would never do that.
I would never talk about Jews publicly, at the very least. We all have our private conscience. I'm sorry. I have a sense of humor. I like that. So now you're saying it's not even taking them down a peg, which we talked about much earlier, but now it's lowering them so you can lift yourself up, potentially. Yeah, that's a thing. Again, the question would be, why do people do that? It may be similar to our earlier answer to taking them down a peg, right? If you can have the moral high ground on this billionaire or whatever, well then you're doing okay, you know, type of thing. Makes you feel better about your life. Yeah. So what? Now what? The one argument, and we've laid out many, but this argument here at the end. What you could say on the surface, the people you're talking about want to do the right thing, don't want this guy saying the really screwed up stuff he's saying. That's all true, right? And there's merit to that. Like, I'm not discounting it. But you're saying underneath that, it also serves a selfish purpose. It also makes these people feel better about themselves in a way that maybe even wouldn't be possible otherwise. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Anything we did with the last, say, half hour-ish of class, that's the kind of paper you want to attempt, okay? And I want to be clear, nobody has to pick whatever they want to write about now, or even necessarily next week. I do think toward the end of next week, you probably want to have an idea, okay? But our assignment, by the way, because I write it down because my memory is terrible, your papers are due Friday, so you want to focus on that. Let's not be silly. And your revisions, if you choose to do them, and I think many of you should, are due Monday by midnight. You should do those. I know some of you, your weekend's going to be busy. You'll be all right. You'll get through it. After all that, we're just doing like brainstorming stuff, okay? Your next assignment is due, I say class time by Monday, but let's be honest. I'm not going to have time to look at it. I remind you guys maybe almost every class. Right when we get out of here, I run to my car so I can pick up my kids from school. So like, I'm not looking at homework this afternoon. I'm not. Get it in sometime Monday. Or even Tuesday morning, potentially. The discussion board, all it is brainstorming. It's a brainstorming exercise. If you want to talk about James Charles, is that James Charles? Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. There was a running back for a long time called Jamal Charles, who I keep thinking of. And it's not him. I don't think.
What do you do?
Huh?
So what do you do?
Jamal Charles?
What's about the running back you talking about?
He was just real good. And then he tore his ACL. He played for the Chiefs for a long time. I'm just saying, I keep thinking I'm getting the name wrong because I have one in my head that's similar. But look, all you owe me for next time. It's a brainstorming discussion board. Post a couple people you're thinking about. It doesn't have to be one. It could be a couple. Respond to each other. If right now you have no idea who you want to write about, see what other people are posting.
Does it gotta be people? Per se, like, I mean, I guess.
I would